is easily influenced by this app. If TikTok has made you spend thousands of dollars and buy a bunch of stuff that you don't need, this video is for you.
I am loving this de-influencing trend because it's truly showing us how much consumerism has taken over our brains and the amount of things that we buy that we just simply do not need.
This is my favorite trend of all time. I can't believe we as a collective are finally admitting that overconsumption is getting out of control.
I fall into the same trap where I needed the next new product or needed to follow the next new trend to feel the most beautiful with my makeup products or with my next glam that I do, that I needed to have the it product to be relevant. And that's just ridiculous.
Today, TikTok and consumer culture. You've heard of influencers, but what about a de-influencer? I'm shihab-eldin, and on this episode of The Stream, we'll look at the TikTok trend and what it's saying about our online shopping habits and our shifting attitudes towards influencers. As always, you can be part of this conversation. Just put your questions and comments into our live YouTube chat. With us to talk about this in London, Aja Barber, author of the book Consume: The Need for Collective Change, Colonialism, Climate Change, and Consumerism. In the U.S. state of Arkansas, Jessica Clifton, an online content creator who focuses on sustainability. And in New York, Aliza Licht, an author, branding expert, and the founder of Leave Your Mark. Welcome to you all. Aja, I want to start with you. What is de-influencing, and what do you attribute to this new trend?
Well, the first thing I'll start with is I hope that it's not a trend. The reality is we have been buying too much for far too long, and the planet can no longer sustain us in this way of buying. And so if this is a trend, it's probably not something that should be a trend. But ultimately, what I'm seeing is a lot of people talking about consumption, which is awesome. That's exactly where we need to be. However, I've seen some people sort of saying, don't buy this instead, when in actuality, we should be asking ourselves why we're buying so much stuff to begin with.
Yeah, I appreciate that framing. I was a bit confused because it seems like they're still kind of influencing, but they're just pivoting and I don't know, like reverse psychology. We'll get into that in a bit. But question, Jessica, your thoughts. Is this a trend and what's driving it? It certainly feels like a trend.
Right now, it definitely is a trend. I'm with Aja. I would love for this conversation to continue further. At first, I was so excited to see this trend as a sustainability content creator who's been trying to create awareness around overconsumption for years. It started with a lot of normal people having awareness about their own overconsumption. People making videos about I didn't realize I had 6 blushes. I didn't realize I continued to buy new hairbrushes, which I think is a beautiful realization to have. It's the realization I had 4 years ago that changed my mindset on consumption forever. But yeah, just like Aja just mentioned, it quickly turned into buy this, not that, bashing brands and buying just different, cheaper dupes, which is going back into the overconsumption hamster wheel that we've been in.
Overconsumption hamster wheel. Aliza, does that ring true to you? Do you feel like this trend is actually separate from influencing in general?
It's a great question. And, to be honest, I agree with both of you on why it's a great thing. But here's where it went awry. When it starts illegitimizing the creator economy, right? Because, Jessica, you said it best in one of your videos, there's amazing content creators on TikTok, for example. And the idea that de-influencing, and I think it's the hashtag overconsumption would have been a better thing to go viral than de-influencing, because I do think what's happening is legitimate creators who are authentic, who care about what they talk about, who care about who they align with, are kind of being roped into this. And then we start to see mainstream headlines that are like, are influencers over? Is influencer marketing dead? And the reality is we live in a world where brands are going to constantly try to sell you something. The only difference here is the TikTok algorithm and the For You page that is feeding you constantly things that they think you want to see.
Right. And whether it is a trend, isn't a trend, we have a lot of people on TikTok commenting about this all. One of whom, Mel, says that this de-influencing trend is actually a trend that's just gone off the rails. Take a look.
Not to be shady, but it seems like a lot of you don't actually know what de-influencing is. Telling people you don't like a product only to recommend they buy a different product is still influencing. The entire ethos of de-influencing is to get people to consume less, not buy other different things. And since we're on the topic, this trend has quickly delved into mean girl territory, using it as an excuse to bully and shame people for the way that they spend their money. Like, it shouldn't need to be said that if somebody buys a product that you don't like or consider be too expensive, it is not a reflection of their level of intelligence or character. Who's actively trying to consume less, I like the idea of this trend, but it is going off the rails very quickly.
So, Aja, what do you think of that? I mean, more people certainly seem to be thinking about their overconsumption habits. We've seen those haul videos featuring sort of fast fashion and beauty products. But what do you make about that video comment? And what are your ethical concerns with all of this? I mean, what's this really about?
My ethical concerns are the fact that we are in a climate crisis, and in a few years, well, actually, no. Right now, different places in the world are already seeing water shortages. We're seeing resource shortages. When I know that the fashion industry accounts for so much waste and so much overconsumption, we're talking millions of products getting incinerated. I know that ultimately this can't be a trend. And, you know, if we're talking about judging people for how they spend their money, no, we shouldn't be doing this, but we should be asking ourselves why we're spending our money in the way we're doing it. When we talk about water crisis in different parts of the world, what you need to understand is things like cotton, which is used for denim t-shirts, that accounts for a lot of water to grow that cotton and to produce and harvest those goods. And so if we already have people that are facing water shortages, and we have a world where we're sort of being pushed to buy 8 pairs of jeans a year, 20 cotton t-shirts, which we ultimately aren't going to wear, and they might end up in the landfill, then what are we doing besides creating more strife and strain for our fellow humans who we share this planet with?
Most certainly, certainly an important question. I don't know if I have an answer. Maybe you do. A lot of people on YouTube also commenting. We have, for example, Cherry Fairy saying consumerism is out of hand and there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. It should just be about consuming less and more ethically, not as in brands, but as in the way we are consuming. So obviously a lot of people reflecting on their habits, as we've said, but I mean, if I'm not mistaken, de-influencing at the end of the day still very much seems like people are trying to influence people's behavior online in terms of how they spend their money. So we've kind of mentioned this point, but I want to share with you an articulate professor who shared it with us. Jonathan sent us this video about the changing identity for influencers and why it's all a bit confusing. Take a listen.
So what we're seeing are influencers becoming de-influencers, but it's a bit of a paradox really, because you've got influencers who are looking to monetize their social presence. And if we look at the rise of the influencer, that was because content creators, through the democratization of information, quite rightly challenged advertisers and journalists about their opinions. But now we see that the tables have turned and influencers are being challenged about being potentially too money hungry. So I think in reality, what we're going to see is a balancing act where influencers are going to be influencers and de-influencers at the same time. And to me, it's a bit like that old psychology trick where if you tell somebody not to do something, it actually increases their curiosity and desire.
So Eliza, what do you make of Jonathan's comments there? I know that you've recently published this article. Headline really gives it away here. It says de-influencing is a scam, actually, and we've seen this trend before. So what do you make of that?
So first of all, I think Jonathan was very well spoken in his answer, but the problem is that it is true. If you even have 100 followers and you are telling them not to do something and they respect your opinion because you're coming from an authentic place, you have influenced them. So I think the issue we're having here is not so much the message as much as it is the hashtag, in a way, that has gone viral because I mean, when we think back to any previous economic downturn, take it 2008, right? 2009 was the year that bloggers really came to the forefront, certainly in fashion. And even though they existed prior to that, that was when all of a sudden everyone was like, wow, here are these people. They're giving their real opinions. Yes, because they had no skin in the game. They were not adhering to advertiser dollars. They really could be authentic. So I think it's twofold. I think there is the need to stop overconsumption, but there's also the need for authentic voices. And there is a lot that's happening online right now where people are taking, as much money as they can. And, you can't blame them. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the other issue is this is a business. Being a full-time content creator is a legitimate small business.
Fair enough. So you said we can't blame them. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Aja. I was going to come to you. Can we blame them?
One of the things that I want to get back to is the fact that I know a lot of people who have been, ethical content creators for a long time. And the reality is we sit out a lot of money for our morals. And I am one of those people. If I were to go around saying that everything that's thrown my way is sustainable, I would be a multimillionaire, right? But I've already evaluated what I want for myself on this planet. And I actually don't want that because I don't think that that's really helping the problem. So there are people that are legitimately in this conversation and have been into it for a long time. And we aren't making all the money, but we are in it for the right reasons. And I like the idea that, I can influence someone by basically re-wearing my clothing a lot and by saying no to bad brands that I know do not care about the planet. And yes, that means that I'm not making all the money, but I think when you reevaluate the planet that we're living on and the systems that we're living under, some people might find that maybe that's not actually the path for you. So it really depends on the person and ultimately what they want out of their platform. And for me, as someone who has sat out hundreds and thousands of dollars because I will not be the face of greenwashing, I can say that you have to evaluate who the person is, what their platform is, and why they're in this. I'm not selling a lot of things on my platform, and because of that, I'm missing out on huge paychecks. But you know what? That is not where my joy comes from. I don't want all the clothes. I don't want fancy cars. I don't want, a lot of the things that we've been told we're supposed to want. And that's a cultural shift that I'm also seeing that I think is important.
Right. And I think when you say cultural shift, that's so important that we frame it as such, because at the end of the day, it's really about a much broader trend outside of TikTok, consumerism, capitalism in general. A lot of people on YouTube commenting on that. Before I come back to you, I want to ask you quickly, Aja, what do you think about the idea that sustainable goods and practices are a privilege that not everyone can afford?
I think people that I have grown up with and known within my friendship circles and my own family are often more sustainable than the people that go out and buy the all new sustainable this and that because that's what you're supposed to have. So I think that conversation has kind of been used to continue our consumerism within our society, because the truth of the matter is sitting back and saying, you know what? I'm not going to buy X amount of new clothes this year. I'm just going to get new jeans. That is something that a lot of us can do, right? Slowing down, it costs you nothing. And a lot of people are already doing that. It's just not fancy and social media packaged.
How about you, Aliza? Yeah, how about you?
I just want to kind of echo what you were saying, Aja. I think what you're talking about sitting out on those opportunities goes back to your belief system, right? And in my upcoming book on brand, which is all about building your personal brand, one of the first exercises is, what is your belief system? What do you want to align with? And I think a lot of people do a good job making sure that they have a clear belief system for their own personal brand DNA and they stick to it. And then there are others who are out for the take. And I completely agree with you. You can miss out on a lot of financial opportunity, but at the end of the day, you have to sleep at night.
That's true. Well, I was just
some people are fine with sleeping at night while selling sweatshop clothes. I'm not.
You're right. You're right.
I was just going to say a lot of people, I think, might be motivated by profit rather than purpose. So maybe they're reflecting more on how they, and in this culture where we're all comparing ourselves to the next person on the next platform, I think that can influence our own belief system. But less about my thoughts, more about yours. I want to share with you Cherry Ferry saying, thank you for reading my comment. My question for the panel is, what is something we can all do to be less consumerist and help the planet? Jessica, what comes to mind when you hear these sort of concerns, either from Cherry Ferry here or just from people who follow you online? What do you say?
Kind of what Aja was just talking about when it comes to buying sustainable goods. The fact of the matter is, green capitalism is not going to solve climate change. It's not going to help overconsumption. So what is so great is a way to help our consumption behavior is literally to change your mindset around consumption. It's all about asking questions before you buy, kind of creating a pause before you purchase something, just to see, is this an impulse purchase? Does this brand treat the planet and its workers correctly? And just starting to ask those questions is a great way to learn how to consume more consciously. It's not about buying new things. It's about shifting that mindset and buying less.
And, you know, anecdotally, in the last few years, I've seen TikTok kind of consuming so many people's attention and bandwidth. It's really, you know, taken off. We've also seen companies like Shein and others just really bring the price point down to a point that's really staggering to believe. I mean, it's hard if you look on their website that this is, forget sustainable, and forget even ethical, but possible. And so with that in mind, I do want to know, like, I guess, Aja, when you see a haul video where people are unboxing tons of clothes from Shein or somewhere else, I mean, what is your initial reaction to that, knowing that there are millions of people potentially doing that on TikTok, for example?
Nausea. I feel nauseous when I see that. It makes me feel sick.
And what is, I mean, I think it's interesting, it makes you feel sick, but it's also making our planet sick. I mean, I asked you earlier, what are the costs? And one of your answers to our producers in the pre-interviews that I found really interesting is you were kind of pinpointing a good solution for consumers is to think about who's benefiting, right? Like, are you benefiting? Is it just the influencer? Could you talk us through some of that and what the real cost is for the planet?
Yeah, so 60% of fibers that exist in retail spaces today are polyester. What that means is they are plastic. A lot of people do not connect the plastic problem to our clothing, but a lot of the clothing that's being made is not being made from natural fibers. So what does that mean? It means it's never going to biodegrade. That dress that you bought to wear one time for a weekend, it's going to be on the planet for longer than you will. And what we also know is with microfibers, they go everywhere, including in our water stream. Fish eat them, you know, so when we are eating and drinking water, as long as we are continuing to wash these fibers that shed, they will get into our food supply. So at the end of the day, I think there's this idea that fast fashion is harmless, and we know that it's harming other people, and we know that it's harming the planet, but eventually that's going to come around and harm you too. You might think you're just having fun, but like, nobody wants to drink plastic.
And by the way, a lot of those hauls are fake. So let's talk about that too. A lot of people are buying in bulk from different brands to create content. So it's not even as if they're actually buying the product. They're doing it to have content creation.
Right, and that's what's concerning to me. Like, when we talk about this as a trend, I mean, all of this is concerning to me, and it should be to all of us. But for example, Cherry Fairy, now part of this conversation, I love when that happens, and YouTube chiming in saying, the problem with saying buy more ethical brands is most of them are expensive and poor people like me can't afford them. But we can do thrift shopping and stuff. So on that issue of the price point, Jessica, what comes to mind for you? I mean, what's the solution? Social media really does tend to make people feel like they're poor or they're missing out.
Yeah, so to me, it's not people who are living within their means that are causing this mass overconsumption. It is the people who are making these $500 and $1,000 hauls of Shein on TikTok. And so when people love to talk about this, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism, it is a really great point. But when people are talking about, you know, shopping more consciously, and if we're talking about these more sustainable products in general, when this comes up, it's never for the people who are living in their means. It's the people where, yeah, if you can spend $500 on a fast fashion company, you can probably consume less and put that money toward brands who are actually treating their workers fairly.
Can I say I quit fast fashion when I was broke?
Say it again, Aja.
When I stopped buying fast fashion when I was broke. Basically, I realized that all of my disposable income was going into the direction of clothing that I didn't even need or really want or like that much.
Well, your disposable income was going to disposable clothing, arguably.
Yes, exactly. And so there became a time period where I was really not financially in a great place. And I was like, something's got to give. And I ended up wearing the clothing in my closet. And it turned out I had a lot of clothing. And I began to realize that I never wanted to go back to that way again. And it's such a better way of living. I don't have the same sort of impulsive purchases, which I think that's what a lot of fast fashion runs on, is impulsive buying. And so when you have that mindset shift, you aren't going to get as pushed into buying something really quickly because you're actually researching and taking the time and saving for things. I think sometimes in our society, we have this idea that if you have to save for something, then that means that it's unfair or unaffordable. But that's just not the way our grandparents shopped. It's not the way we're supposed to be buying clothing. It shouldn't be that a dress costs the same as a latte.
So
that just isn't.
No.
We can't have a world where we pay people fairly if that's what we're looking for. But additionally, the person that has to pick between paying their light bill or buying a pair of trousers from an unethical maker is never going to be the person doing the whole video.
Yeah.
So we have to be realistic about who is doing the damage here. And I think for a long time, this conversation has been very dishonest.
Yeah, dishonest, and I think a lack of transparency and accountability, which I'm so grateful that we're bringing to it today. Aja, obviously it's safe to say that influencing, for better or worse, is not going anywhere. With that in mind, what are some of the takeaways? Well, we have actually Aditi Mayer, who's a sustainable fashion blogger, who actually shares with us what she thinks of the whole de-influencing trend, why it matters, and where it may be going. Take a listen.
The fact that we have this name of de-influencing and the fact that it has permeated to the internet at large is so important for the cultural zeitgeist. We need more conversations about how influencer culture is predicated on this really false idea of aspiration that is all about mindless consumption or single-use outfits, and that needs to change. But what concerns me is the fact that de-influencing is being called a trend. I hope that de-influencing is not a fleeting moment on the internet, and I hope that it becomes an opportunity for us to kind of think more critically about these fast-paced, consumption-laced platforms like TikTok.
So, Eliza, what should people keep in mind if they want to keep buying things? I mean, any advice here?
Well, first of all, I would say that if anyone is truly against what they believe is TikTok's fault, then they should probably get off the platform, number one. Like, no one has to be there and you control who you follow. You certainly can feed your For You page to give you back what you want to see. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that I don't think that we should be shaming content creators who are promoting brands. It's their livelihood. So I think we have to separate what is an actual job. I'm not saying they should be doing hauls from Shein. I don't think anyone should shop at Shein, but this is advertising. This is our new form of advertising since the influencer economy.
So Eliza, because we're running out of time, I just want to pepper in a comment that just came in on this issue. Charles Kaplan saying on YouTube to us, thanks to the celebrities for allowing themselves to be the poster people for fast fashion, different clothes, every frequent event, yay Hollywood. So, okay,
correct.
Where do we play? Yeah, is that not fair?
But hold on, they're borrowing samples. Okay, that is where I come from. I used to dress every celebrity for the red carpet. Those are actually, that is the most sustainable practice. Those are borrowed samples. They're not even.
Aja, do you agree? Fair enough. Aja, do you agree?
If you're showing different things constantly, people don't know that, right? So, like, there is power in the celebrity who rewears the thing, whether it's borrowed or not. We are still impacting the culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
To me, it all has to do about motive, and I think celebrities showing up in different outfits every single time you see them does promote that we need to be wearing different things all the time. So whether it's samples or not, they're still promoting the overconsumption because the normal consumer doesn't know that these are samples. They are just high dollar items that they're wearing on the red carpet that they never wear again.
But think about how it affects all the other industries, right? If you wear a different garment, which, many celebrities change during the day to get the attention of paparazzi, you have many different photos in different outfits, which means media sites are going to pick up all different versions of you in different outfits. So everything is feeding each other. It is an ecosystem of media is what we're talking about.
Fair enough. I mean, certainly an ecosystem that has a lot of flaws, but also thanks to this conversation, thanks to your expertise, hopefully we can move in a direction that's more sustainable for everybody. For what it's worth, it's given me a lot to think about. So I want to thank you, Aja, Jessica, Eliza. I mean, maybe I'm winning in some way because I think I've worn this blazer on every single show this month. So definitely not living up to the celebrity culture. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to everyone for your comments, particularly you. Cherry Sherry, I don't know if that's your name, but always love when you guys get into this conversation. See you next time.